Hello, my friends. Today, I want to talk to you about imposter syndrome. I think this is a word or a term rather that we throw around a lot, and I just really want to diffuse it for you today. I just really want you to be able to let it go. So here's what I think about imposter syndrome is that whenever we're bumping up against the edge of our current capabilities or how we see ourselves, how we understand ourselves, we bump up against that edge. That's when this term gets introduced. Okay. And when we use the term imposter syndrome, we talk about it like we have a disease, like something is really the matter here. Like we make it a big problem, like, oh no, I have imposter syndrome. And the definition of imposter has words like pretend or deceive or fraud in it. And the definition of fraud contains words like criminal or nefarious. And so, no wonder we are a little bit freaked out when we have imposter syndrome because we've made it so intense. Okay. But I just want us to make peace with this today. So, all that's really happening when you feel imposter syndrome is you're feeling feelings, you're feeling doubt, you're feeling insecurity, and just general discomfort. And I think that discomfort just comes from your stretching and your growth and that person that you're trying to become. And it just feels uncomfortable. The other thing about this definition is that it includes other people most of the time. So it's not just that we feel doubt and insecurity and discomfort about our skills and our accomplishments and whatever, but there's also this element of other people, like we don't want them to know about it. We don't want them to see that we might not be 100% that person yet. And so all it is we're worried about what other people think of us and the fact that we're not perfect, that we're trying on a version of us, we're trying something that we just haven't 100% assimilated yet. It's not like you flip a switch and all of a sudden you're a new person. Like it takes some time. Okay. But for some reason, our brain doesn't want people to know that we go through that process, but we do. So let's just make peace, first of all, with not being perfect all the time and not being done, like not being ready. Let's just make peace with that at times we're growing and that we're new at something and that it just hasn't totally sunk in. We haven't totally assimilated yet that new version of us. Okay. So when you're pushing up when you're pushing up against the edge of who you have been and you're moving into becoming someone new, it's going to feel uncomfortable. It just is. And a good tool that I like to think about when I'm thinking about this is the alter ego tool. Okay. Alter ego. And an alter ego is it's just a different version of you. That's all it is. And so many people use alter egos, professional athletes, famous people, high performers. They create in their mind kind of an alter ego, which is a version of them that they need to call upon when they need to access certain skills, when they need to show up in a certain way. And you probably are already doing this. When you go to work, for example, and you have to be a certain person at work, like you have to show up as a certain person at work. That's you accessing certain parts of yourself that you need in those moments for those circumstances. And when you go visit your family, let's say you go visit your extended family, you show up as a certain version of you. And it's a version that hopefully is like because we want to get along with them. And so we amend who we are a little bit so that we can get along with people, let's say. And if I'm going to get up and give a speech, I'm going to do some public speaking. I'm accessing certain parts of myself that I don't have to access when I'm just like sitting at church with my family, right? So you're already doing this to an extent. So all we need to do is just expand this skill that you have of accessing kind of alter egos and just expand it into the areas that you want to grow into and the person that you want to become. So I like to think about this like gears of a bike, where you've been using gears and those gears are helping you where you are, and they've helped you to get where you are today. But now you need to access new gears to get you where you want to go. Okay. And here's what you need to know is when you are shifting into a new gear on a bike, it's like jarring, right? It's a little bit jarring. It goes kunk, and it at least my bike, which might not be very well tuned, but it excuse me, it goes kunk, and then it shifts into the new gear, and then there's like this adjustment period. It shifts the muscles that you're using. Like maybe you were using more quads and now you have to use more glutes and hamstrings. And so your body adjusts, and it takes a little bit to get used to. And what happens is you feel the jolt in your nervous system when you're trying to stretch yourself, right? You're like, this is you, and you're starting to stretch yourself. You're trying to reach out and access, like, well, you're really kind of reaching deep, but you're trying to access a different skill for yourself, a different quality that you need, a different character quality or whatever. And you're reaching for it, and it's kind of outside the existing bubble that you're used to. And so it feels disconcerting to your nervous system, and it feels uncomfortable. It feels foreign. And so what you do, most of us, is we scale back and we pull away. We think, oh, it must mean I'm doing the wrong thing. It must not be right. Or it just doesn't feel like me. This is what people will say. It just doesn't feel like me. And so we retreat, and you stick with the gears that you're most familiar with. We just keep scaling back to who we have been. So all that needs to happen here is you push up against your boundaries. You try to become somebody new, different version of you. You access some part of you, and it's going to feel uncomfortable. And when it does, we need to manage your mind and manage yourself, manage your emotions long enough so that you can get used to being that person and get used to feeling what it feels like to need a little bit more confidence, or to need a little bit more assertiveness, or whatever it is we're trying to access. But you got to be able to manage yourself through those bumps, okay, and that discomfort. When you shift into new gears, let's just decide it's not going to feel like you. Okay, like I said, it feels foreign. It feels like doubt. It feels like insecurity because you're not that person yet. But if you keep downshifting, then you never get used to accessing that version of you. You haven't asked yourself to shift into these gears before, right? You haven't asked yourself to grow in this way. Now, here's one thing I want to introduce to you is you kind of are an imposter, okay? You haven't assimilated a lot of these things yet. And so it makes perfect sense that you feel like that. But I want to flip this on its head a little bit, and I want you to think about the you that you are now is the imposter. Because you are not in the fullest expression of who you are. You have been underestimating the depth and breadth of your capabilities. Superman, if you think about this, is the real person. Superman is the superhero, and Clark Kent, which is his alter ego, is the fake version. That's who you are. What if you're living small and you're not growing into the fullest version of you, and so you are kind of an imposter? When you do this, you expand and you grow who you are. And then when you're ready to grow again, you'll access new gears for who that person needs to be. And you're ever expanding, ever growing. And that is who you really are. The small version of you that you hide because you don't want people to know anything about you or have thoughts about you is not the real you. Okay. And every time you're accessing these alter egos, I want you to remember that is you. It's not a fake version of you. We're not faking it till we make it. We're just practicing becoming who we were always meant to become. Okay. So embrace the discomfort of pushing on your edges. Explore those gears that you haven't called upon yet, because we don't want to keep ourselves small because of what other people might think or discover. You have one life. Live it fully. Thank you for being here today.